Welcome to another episode of Close of Play with me, Sanjay Murthy. I'm delighted today to be joined by a man who spent 20 years following the England cricket team around places from Lords to Lahore, writing about the fantastic game that we all love for the Times, as well as his own blog, Line and Length, a satirical and quirky take on life in the press box. Please welcome to Close of Play, Mr. Patrick Kidd. Patrick, how are you?
Hello, Sanjay.
We've got a mutual friend, obviously, Magic Mark Mason, as he's called nowadays, and he was kind enough to introduce me to you when we had lunch the other day, and he just said, "Look, to me, you'd be a great guest to have on Close of Play," and Close of Play is actually relevant for you because after 20 years of being a sports writer for the Times, you've kind of hung up your quill on a full-time basis.
Full-time basis for the Times. I still write
Yep.
for them a bit. I do a series of London features and book reviews and stuff like that. But I'm now writing for other newspapers, for the Observer, for the Telegraph, the Spectator. I have a sports column in the Critic. Basically, I've gone freelance, which is great fun. It gives me flexibility. It means that when it was the last day of the England-India Test match at Lords this year, I could get up at 6 a.m. and write my day's piece and get down to Lords for 11 o'clock. So I'm quite enjoying the freedom of that. But yeah, for I was at the Times 24 years, and a lot of that time was spent on sport, especially between 2004 and 13, when I then moved off to write about politics for a few years, but still had a sport as a sort of side interest.
And match reports, I mean, they've always fascinated me, really, because, you've got a filing deadline, especially, I guess, in the old days of print, and that it still exists, obviously. You've got a filing deadline, but you don't know the result. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, cricket generally being a daytime sport, you've got a bit more leeway.
Okay.
So you would have, play finishes at 6, you have a bit of time to digest it, but you don't know if there's going to be a flurry of wickets at the end of the day. In fact, there's a lovely story about Henry Blofeld in the early 80s when he was writing for The Guardian, and he had to leave a county match at Chelmsford early to go to a dinner. And so he'd written his piece all about how I think Keith Fletcher had made 100. And Surrey had started batting at the end of the day, and he just put, in the remaining hour, Surrey made X runs for Y wickets. Note to subs, can you include it? And then he rang in later from the dinner and said, did you add those numbers? And they said, yes, yeah. And I said, how many runs did they make? And they said, 14. And he said, did they lose any wickets? And they said, yes, 10. And so obviously, but it was all changed in the office. A young Matthew Engel, who went on to become Wisden's editor, rewrote it. I mean, for me, actually, with some other sports where you really had the not knowing. My last assignment as a permanent sports writer was the US Open Golf at Merion in Pennsylvania, the Justin Rose one.
Yeah.
And our print deadline was about midnight. And at about 10 past midnight, he was teeing off on the 18th. And so they were holding it back, but we didn't know, was he going to win? First British winner of the US Open, I think, since Tony Jacklin, or first English rather. And so I had two versions of the intro, but of course most of it was written, and that's what you do. You build it up throughout the day, you have good thoughts, you have paragraphs, and then the top goes in. My former colleague Simon Barnes once had a lovely line. He said that if it's an evening football match, people would say to him, what do you do, Simon, if you don't have the time to write a really great piece? And he said, I'd write a really bad piece. What's the other option? You do just deliver. You don't send in a blank column.
No, sure. And is that true of digital as well, or does it just make life a lot easier for everybody?
Well, you have a bit more space and a bit more freedom, but of course that doesn't give you the discipline. So, I mean, knowing you've got to write 400, 600, 1,000 words, that gives you that discipline to work to. I always delivered. I quite liked it. The problem would sometimes be if technology failed you and you're trying to get your words across and suddenly the Wi-Fi has gone down or whatever. There'd be a bit of sort of shouting and cursing. But, say an England match report, that would finish 6:30. You'd have a bit of time to sort of turn it in.
Yeah.
Whereas actually I think digital, they want it much quicker, which I think is less good. You don't perfect them.
Yeah, technology is interesting, isn't it? Because you remember Brian Scovell, don't you?
Yeah.
So his son Gavin's a good friend of mine, and he's a TV director, as you know. And he was saying that in COVID they had to do some remote directing of a match, and I think the match was in the Caribbean. He was here, I think Stockley Park or in Shepherd's Bush or somewhere, and the screens went blank for 20 minutes. So he had to direct this match, but he couldn't see anything. He had no idea where the ball was, where the cover point had got to, or any of that stuff. But he said, the reliance on technology is so much nowadays, but yet when it fails you, you've got no backup, essentially.
Yeah, and fly by the seat of your pants. I've had a couple of instances where I had to do. I'm old enough that I still overlapped with copy takers. We call you would
Okay.
have people on the end of a phone and I remember. I mean,
You
back in
phoned
the
it in.
old days, before my time, people would ring their copy in from the press box. I was there in the email age all the time. But in 2005, I was sent out to northern France with the Australian cricket team before the Ashes, and they were going on a bonding trip to go look at the war graves. It was fascinating to wander
That's
around
right.
these
Because they'd
graves.
stopped at Gallipoli on the way.
Yeah, that was the previous tour.
Oh,
I
was it?
think,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then that went so well they decided they're going to see the First World War graves and to wander around. And I read a really nice piece about you'd see a Ponting or a McGrath on a gravestone all worn, and chatting to them. But in those days, the Wi-Fi was really patchy, and I was coming back by Eurostar, so I wrote it by hand and dictated my piece from the Eurostar train. That was fun. Then a few years later, do you remember there was the terrorist attacks in Mumbai?
Yep.
In 2008, was it?
8, yeah.
And the England cricket team were in India at the time, and they weren't sure if they'd continue with the tour. I wasn't covering the tour, but I was sent out to Dubai, where England basically withdrew to consider whether, and Reg, their security man, went and assessed. And so there was a group of us outside the room where England were having this meeting, trying to work out whether they were going to return to the tour. And it was late at night, so again, deadlines were pressing. And my laptop had decided it wasn't going to hold a charge. The only way the battery would work is if I held in the cable at a certain angle.
Okay.
And that's the only way that it would keep on charge. And so I was having to write the piece one-handed while holding it in the cable and knowing that if my hands went numb and it slipped, it's going to stop charging. And that was a real deadline thing because their meeting went on and on. And occasionally players would come out of the room to go to the loo and you'd be trying to gauge from their faces, is the tour on, is the tour off? So that was really memorable of how technology can let you down. But we delivered. You have to in the end. And ultimately, I'd have phoned it in if the computer wouldn't allow.
Exactly. And I remember that because I lived in Dubai at that time. So I was there. If I remember having dinner with Andrew Strauss in Abu Dhabi, where I think they played a test at the Sheikh Zayed Stadium. And did they play there or did they just
No, that was
decide to go back?
2012.
That was 2012, was it? Okay.
I covered that tour.
Okay.
So you said at the beginning I went from Lords to Lahore. I never actually made it to Lahore because we didn't tour. I did an overseas tour against Pakistan, but it was in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And yeah, that was in 2012. And that was an interesting tour. But yeah, I mean, they were in sort of gilded luxury in these wonderful hotels.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you can see why, whilst Pakistan would obviously love to, and they've started to, I guess, play cricket back, in their home country, having the luxury of playing, or staying in a place like Dubai was something I guess a lot of players look forward to. Because a lot of players, sort of live there and sort of holidayed there across a number of sports anyway, because it's just the place that people went to.
It was surprisingly low atmosphere, though. The crowds were really poor.
Oh, it was very bad, yeah.
Whereas I was lucky. I mean, I was never one of the international press pack every winter. But I was lucky I went to India twice and Bangladesh.
Right. Yeah.
And I was there for the Cricket World Cup in 2011 in India and Bangladesh. And they were packed. I mean, I covered that great game, the tied match between England and India.
Oh, yes.
When Strauss made 150.
Yeah.
Shazad came out and hit a 6 near the end to get a tie. And that was packed and that was thrilling. Whereas I would have loved to have seen England play Pakistan in Lahore or Karachi in front of a big crowd for passionate play.
I went to '96 World Cup was in India as well, and I saw India Pakistan play at the Chinnaswamy in Bangalore, or Bengaluru as it is now. There's about 100,000 people in the stadium that holds 60,000 people. I think 30 to 40,000 were with security and police.
Yes.
It was one of those things. That's the one where Jadeda hit those sixes over extra cover a lot. It's an amazing atmosphere, a full cricket ground, but it is the shame with Dubai. I've been to Dubai Sports City and Dubai International Cricket Stadium and Sheikh Zayed Stadium in Abu Dhabi a number of times. The favourite actually is Sharjah because it's smaller, it's more intimate, and actually, you can get a bit of a crowd in there, and actually you feel like that you're in an international match because there is some crowd, unlike the other two stadiums which are vast.
Yeah, indeed. No, it's fascinating to see. There was one very frustrating test when England were chasing only 140 and were bowled out for 70 or something. But so I did do a bit of overseas touring. Most of my cricket reporting was in England. I went to all the test grounds, all the county grounds here. But then I wrote about rugby and tennis and golf and Olympic sports and stuff.
But the with that, with the access that you had to the players, you must have come across some characters, some funny stories and anecdotes and stuff. So have you got a top three, I guess, of funny stories that you've had?
What I liked, so because I wasn't the day-to-day press pack, I interviewed the Broads and the Flintoffs and
Yeah.
Strausses and all that. But I wasn't sort of living with them, and that gave me actually quite a welcome separation. But occasionally I'd get to do these master classes, and they were quite
Okay.
fun. So on one occasion, I went to interview Matthew Hoggart at Headingley, and the gimmick was that I would face him in the nets, and then we'd do an interview.
Right, okay.
And I remember he sent one down that to me felt fast. It probably was only 70 miles an hour, but it hit me just above the thigh pad.
You're right.
And he shouted, "Oh, that were flesh, that were!" And a bruise came up for edges. And then on another occasion, I did a spin bowling masterclass with Graham Swan, and Murley.
Yeah.
I think that must have been at Northampton. And Murley, as you know, is one of the most polite, nicest players in
nicely
sport.
spoken. Yeah.
And I'm a rubbish cricketer, I admit that. And I sent down a few overs of non-turning slow stuff and said to him, what do you think? And he said, "Oh, not even village standard." But the best sledging I got was the 2009 Ashes. Again, the gimmick was you get an interview and you can do a bit of play. And I faced Jeff Thomson in the nets at the Oval. And Thompson must have been in his 60s, but still, again, to me, felt fast.
Yeah.
So I put 3 boxes down my trousers just to protect myself. And
all in the same place.
Yeah, all the way down. It's a triple layer. And I said to him, "Oh, try not to hit me." And he looked at me. "Well, you can see what I look like." And he said, "Mate, there's an awful lot of you to aim at." So I thought, yeah, I've been sledged by Tomo, but I've been sledged by Murley, which is even more surprising.
Exactly. But it's funny, isn't it, that difference between, what if you've just played club standard, when you face somebody who has played or plays international cricket and they're not deemed as being a quick bowler, let's say, the difference in speed is quite incredible. Because when I lived in Hong Kong, Marie was playing for Warwickshire in England at the time, but lived there. And I played for the KCC, the Cowden Cricket Club. And he broke my toe in the net. I didn't see it. And you'd say that Dermot was, military medium in international standards.
Quick enough.
But quicker, I didn't see it. So
what I also liked, I did a few seasons of covering the England under-19s, and I loved seeing the players on the way up. And you could talk a bit more freely to them. And so there was that 2006-07 era when I saw Stephen Finn, Adil Rashid, Moeen Ali, Chris Wokes. And then the Indians who came over, they had a young Virat Kohli, Ishant Sharma.
Yeah.
And, you're trying to predict who are going to be the greats. And, I think Kohli was always going to be down to be a great. But there was another guy called Tanmay Shrivastava, who made big runs in Kent, I think. And he didn't have a test career, didn't have much of a first class. And of that England team, Varun Chopra, who had a decent county career, but he never quite made it. And yet I saw he made 200s against the touring Indians. And you thought he might be a future.
How much of that do you think is talent, and how much do you think is mindset?
A bit of both, but also just sheer luck as well. Sometimes you can get a rough decision, or you're not favoured by the selectors. I wouldn't necessarily look at say who was in that batting side, a Chopra or Rashid, and say one's going to make it and one's not. But yeah, Ravi Papara, I saw him at 15, and I thought he's going to have a really great career, and he made 3 Test hundreds.
Yeah.
But you see this in all sorts of sport. So I would sometimes go and cover things like the qualifying tour for the golf, and you'd see the gap between the nearly players and the great players isn't much. As they say, the hardest distance is the distance between your ears.
Yeah, 100%. I managed when I lived in Dubai, I was an agent and managed players, but golf as well. And I managed a guy who was on the Asian tour. He's 6'6", hit the ball a country mile. For all intents and purposes, a brilliant golfer. But just he won one or two tournaments because, as you say, the gap wasn't that big, but it was just one putt across 4 days. Or it was a tee shot that didn't go right, and the margins for error were really small. Do you think that's true of cricket as well?
Well, of course, if you're a batsman, especially, one bit of misjudgment, one great ball, one ball that doesn't quite bounce, and that's it. That's your day over. A bowler can always. I've just written in my latest column for The Critic about this new gimmick in tennis, the 1-point slam they're introducing before the Australian Open. Have you seen this? It's a series of matches where there's only 1 point.
Okay.
You decide, you toss a coin who's going to serve or receive, and the
Yeah.
winner of that point goes through to the next round.
Oh, really?
And the winner gets 500,000 of the whole thing. Alcaraz's blow. And I've suggested, that's a reduction to the ludicrous level. And yet, in cricket, if you decided, say, the Ashes would be decided by the first ball, then Zach Crawley's first ball in 2023, we won the Ashes. Rory Burns'
Yeah.
first ball the previous series, we lost the Ashes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think judging the whole thing on one ball is really rough. But if you're a batsman, that's it. Day over.
And talking the Ashes, it's already started. David Warner's in the press talking about this, and Stuart Broad's come out and said that. It's all part of the fun, isn't it, really?
It is, of course. I mean, have we yet had the Glenn McGrath prediction of 5-0?
I think he's already done it. I think he did it about 2 months ago.
Oh, well.
Only because someone asked him and he had nothing. He said, what else am I going to say?
I'm really looking forward to the Ashes, of course.
Yeah.
I'm really worried that our preparation is minimal. We're about, as we record this, we're a couple of days before the 2020 series in New Zealand. And that's our preparation.
No.
4 of the Ashes squad are playing 2020, and then the rest are going to go on to Australia.
Yeah. And then you've got Lions there, and that's the only game, I think, isn't it?
There's the Prime Minister's 11 two-day match, and the Lions are there.
Okay.
But, when Len Hutton sent a team out there, led the team in 54-55, they played 7 matches before the first test. Even when Strauss went in 2010-11, they played 3 matches before the first test. Australia's a hard place to tour. You've got to get used to the light. Is blindingly light the hardest. I just can't believe you can do that. So for all Stuart Broad saying this is the worst Australian team for 15 years, we're not going to be undercooked. We're not actually even out of the freezer.
No. Yeah, it's. And what do you think that is? Do you think it is the schedule? Do you think it is overconfidence? What would you put that decision down to?
Well, they want shorter tours, I guess, and maybe they feel also there've been a pattern of state sides not putting out their strongest teams to test them. As to be fair, English counties don't do either. I mean, when I was a kid growing up in Essex, we would go and watch the touring sides come out, and Graham Gooch and Nasser Hussain would be playing against them.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
You're getting so it's not much of a test, and maybe they feel they can get a stronger test in the nets. But it will have been 2 months since the end of the county season. It's a pity they can't fit in 2 3-day matches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's actually funny you say that. Essex, 2001 Ashes. I remember going to Chelmsford. It was the when Nasser had broken his fingers. I think it was the Poppadom fingers time, because of a previous role, I had some golf clubs for Ricky Ponting, and actually he'd left Damien Martin's driver in my golf bag, so I drove to Chelmsford to give him his drive. So I'm walking through, and this is how security has changed. You can't do it nowadays. Walking through Chelmsford, the cricket ground with Damien Martin's driver in my hand, and I got asked by one security guard what I was doing. I said, I've got to give it to Ricky Ponting. Okay,
Unlikely story.
So I just, so, I mean, how good is that story? So I just remember sitting where just on the stairs next to the changing rooms, and they come down the middle. And I remember they wouldn't let Nasser bat because he had to prove his fitness in that match. And Jason Gillespie just craned it for about 2 hours in the afternoon of this match. And then he got out eventually, and he ran up the stairs and got some jip off the crowd. And he just turned around and said, "Mate, we're gonna all over you in this Ashes," and he was right.
Well, my childhood was us having that sort of treatment from Australia over and over again. But as an Essex fan, it was a good time to be growing up in the 80s and 90s.
It was a good side, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They Keith Fletcher captaincy, and Nasser came through, and James Foster, and did Neil Foster play there as well?
No, Neil Foster was there in the 80s. Derek Pringle. You then had Such and Childs, very good counter spinners. No, it was a really good team. And you also had some very good overseas players like Mark Waugh, Salim Malik, Alan Border for a spell. So, it was a great time to grow up. And cricket was my big love. And it's still, people often say, what's your favourite? I think cricket is, but I do love rugby. And my son's playing under-9s rugby for Blackheath now. So I really...
Right, okay, nice.
Martin Samuel in the Times recently wrote about what's your favourite sport to go and watch. And he said watching your child play. Actually, you're very lucky as sports writers to go and see great things. I've seen Ashes tests, I've seen Andy Murray winning Wimbledon, I've been to the Olympics, but actually watching my son play for Blackheath under-9s, that really matters.
I was going to ask you a load of stories about access to players and how that's changed, but I think that's a lovely place to finish, Patrick. I think you summed sport up nicely in terms of it's there for the children to grow up and enjoy. And, if they become something, they become something, but the enjoyment and the taking part and all of the physical and mental benefits that sport gives you is probably the a good closing point for this. I always run over. I say 15 minutes, but 20 is not too bad.
20 is fine. It's been great, and I still love watching sport. But yeah, it's the camaraderie that you get. That's what it's all about.
No, exactly. Hopefully, England will do the job this winter. I've got Geraint Jones and I are doing a post Ashes every day for for 3 or 4 months, 2 months or whatever it lasts for. So that's been good to get his insight from somebody who's both obviously won and lost the Ashes in his career. So I shall send you the links to that.
I look forward to that.
Patrick, lovely. Thanks very much for your time, and good luck with everything that you do.
Thank you, Sanjay. Cheers.